long story, but I'll try to keep it short. Is we did not start as a group that wants to do collective housing projects or cooperative housing cooperatives. We started just as a group of students that were interested in urban questions. Basically, we were organizing a conference titled "The City in the Crisis" or "The Crisis of the City." It was just a couple of us. We were all sociologists at that time, but then we started connecting with other people, like from areas of geography, architecture, urbanism, and then later we started talking what we want to do. We said we're all interested in how living could be different from social and from spatial or architectural point of views. So basically, we just met up and started discussing what do we want to do.
2014, they started as a group of students that were discussing what to do.
And I think a year or so later, or 2 years later, we actually registered a housing cooperative, which is called Zadrugator, by the way, which we did not answer before.
Yeah, and Zadrugator, the name comes from Zadružni generator. We would say Zaduga is in Slovenia co-op, and generator is generator. So this is kind of the wordplay behind it. So co-op generator, basically.
And also it's from a neighboring country. It alludes to the name of doing something for others, not for yourself. From start, we were interested just in how to live differently, how to organize differently. We were interested, for instance, into what would the feminist approach to housing be. Very simple question for us, but more complex answers. And then when we were doing this, we started realizing, yeah, we will also have problems with housing. The first idea, we started looking what are they doing elsewhere. We said maybe we invent something, but let's also look what they are doing elsewhere. So we were looking from all over the world, different approaches. We really liked, for instance, Uruguay and their housing cooperatives. But the more we started thinking of how to apply these specific approaches to our local context, we realized like these examples from Switzerland or from Vienna were very close to us. So from that point on, we started thinking, how do we make our own housing? Yeah? A very important piece of information is that at that point, we also started cooperating slightly with Faculty of Architecture, with one of the professors, Anja Planišček, who is now also informally, but very much involved as a part of our group. And we started cooperating with her seminar, with her students. And we just found a couple of random empty places or a couple of old buildings around Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia. And we, together with them, so us as sort of social researchers and potential inhabitants, and a group of students of architecture started of thinking how to change these buildings to facilitate community-style living, different approaches to housing.
At the end of the seminar, there was this big exhibition at the Faculty of Architecture, and they had this kind of opening that, the media was also invited to, and some public actors. And shortly after that, we also organized a big conference on housing cooperatives. An opportunity for Slovenia, I think, was the subtitle. And this also got a lot of attention. So this really, I think, helped us, a lot.
It was a huge event, like several hundred people attended to listen in, like both professional students and people who are just into, people who slowly started to realize they will soon have to deal with the question of housing, and we're looking into alternatives. Let's say at the height, it was around 12 or 13 very active people. Now it's around three very active people and additional 3 active people. So around 6 people that are now involved, but in the meantime, these things have become much more professionalized. So this is also part of it. But we have only officially, I think, 12 members that are members of the cooperative that have paid in the share. But this is also intentionally, because these shares are kind of reserved for future residents. And we have intentionally prevented any new people to register and become potential residents through that, because we want to get the project to a point when we will be able to say for 100%, this is how much it will cost you, this is where you will live, in this kind of house, and in I don't know, in half a year or in a year, yeah,
or in 2 years,
or in 2 years. But we want to make things very certain, because we know there's full of ups and downs, and we don't want to kind of there were other initiatives in Slovenia, by the way. There's no housing co-ops in Slovenia. There was one, the 2 trials before, but they have both failed. So we never advertised apartments as such. We only promoted the idea of cooperatives. But at a certain point, we will open up and we will start looking directly. But this does not mean that we don't have a rough idea who potential residents will be, because throughout all this time, we constantly got contacted by different people saying, we really want to live here. So we basically made a list of interested people, potential residents. And while we were developing concept ideas, at not all the time, but at several points, we have included them into the design process. So the pilot project is basically, it again works on 2 levels. So one thing is trying to, through it, develop a replicable model, a replicable system. And the other, of course, most important thing, probably, at least in terms of tangibility, is to finally construct one housing co-op. Together with municipality, we have identified a piece of public land owned by the municipal housing fund. We have housing funds that are supposed to build public housing, but they don't have money. Fortunately, they have a little bit of land, so it's also good from their side to just give the land, and we provide supposedly the capital to construct on it. And the end result, it's almost the same. We have accessible housing. Yeah. So we are talking about a project probably the size of something like 32 apartments, which would facilitate housing for about 110, 115 people. It's very mixed housing, so it's everything from single unit homes to family apartments to how's it called? Cluster flats. So it's a flat apartment where they have individual rooms, but they share. Yeah? This is specifically interesting for elderly. We have, again, another type of diversity, not just income diversity. We want to have age diversity. So you know, it's not just young families moving in and then all of a sudden they become old together as well. But we want to have this fluidity, this mix constantly. And we have also been working with some pensioners already, and they have expressed it very clearly. They want to live in cluster apartments because they want to, you know, live that way, but not just within this cluster apartment. They want to cooperate. I mean, help each other out also on the house level, or even on the community level, on the level of the street or the neighborhood. And this was what I was looking for. So that primarily we're working on rental cooperatives.
Our pilot project is a rental cooperative.
And we see these cooperatives as the most promising. Do you see them as the most ideal model that we would like to establish? But in some cities where the prices are really, really low, this kind of model does not make so much sense. So we don't want to say this to these people, no, don't do a cooperative, but we just try to help them think about how to still make them as non-speculative as possible.
We're looking into ways how to still kind of protect the public interest and still make this cooperative an ownership cooperative. So basically, we're looking at then the securities and the kind of that you build in the contract some security system that you're not able to sell this in a
with a huge profit.
Yes.
Or for instance, the most likely mechanism that we will establish will it be that the municipality will have the first right of purchase. So before you are able to sell outside, the municipality will be able to purchase it back. Yeah, so we have the law on cooperatives in Slovenia, and we registered as such according to this law. This law is quite good. In fact, it enables cooperatives to be a very dynamic term. It enables groups to organize according to what they think is best. Of course, these main cooperative principles are still very much ingrained into it, but it allows a lot of mobility, a lot of variation. But it only talks about cooperatives. It does not talk about housing cooperatives. We call ourselves housing cooperative, but from a legal perspective, we are just a cooperative. And in addition to this, we are also a social enterprise, which is an attachment to the legal form of a cooperative, because we also, a couple of years ago, accepted the laws on social enterprises. But it also enables us to, from the legal point of view, to establish some sort of protectional mechanisms that at the point where we will actually be constructing a house, it will help us prevent ourselves to do speculative actions and, I don't know, to change the legal form, to sell, and to make a lot of profit. Yeah? So the idea is to make us a safeguard, some sort. Also, we cannot distribute profits, which is also something we do as a cooperative. We don't have to be a social enterprise for that, but also it does not completely prevent, but it makes it easier, it makes it a little bit more secure and a little bit harder for us to change the legal form to become, let's say, a limited liability company, and to then just sell everything and become for-profit organization. It's not impossible, but it's much harder. And we were, I think most of us were very active in different activist circles and different groups, but I won't say anybody of us was really good in this kind of collective organization, or we did not have any tools or approaches. Everything was done by instinct. And I think I don't see this as an obstacle or a problem. I mean, as a major challenge. It's just something that maybe would be easier if we would know these things. I think we still lack this knowledge.
Yeah, we at some point I feel that we really didn't take care of each other as a group. As kind of we had some issues and we didn't know how to address them. And then every time we said, okay, next week or every meeting from now on, we're gonna start with how everybody feels and whatever, and we never did. And some stuff like this, that's we were just really awkward about it.
So it's very demanding, and you see everybody's overburdened, but then you are at the point where you have to do even more work. So how do you then, you cannot demand from anybody to do it. It's things like that. But apart from it, most challenges and obstacles came from outside. So and the most important one, of course, was these legal issues, which we mentioned before. So the fact that even when we have the model completely developed, there's no law that would enable to have the model to have the project as we really wanted. And also maybe another challenge, which we have not mentioned, is Slovenia does not have a progressive banking sector. It's very rigid. It's very, they have just these classical products and services. We don't have any social investors. We don't have any ESG type of banking. So it's also difficult to talk with them. And we don't have any ethical or cooperative banks or anything like that. So this is also another obstacle, and another reason why it is important to cooperate with public actors.
In Slovenia, actually, the country is quite small, and till a couple of years ago, it was doing quite well, actually. We are able to basically connect with the public institutions, and they're not, you know, as corrupt as, for example, in Belgrade, where you really don't stand a chance to convince them to do something good for the benefit of the people or something like this. And we like the model of, you know, connecting the public and the private, just so that we can secure housing that is more accessible. This is really the basic goal. So if we have the public actor as our partner, then they can give us some benefits and we can provide the flats cheaper.
Yeah. So this component of affordability is super important for us. Without this model, in places like Ljubljana or other cities, the land is really expensive. Yeah. So because it's very limited, so it's impossible to do projects that would target anything else that, let's say, middle class. But without this sort of cooperation with municipalities, it's impossible to do it. We will need financial support also from the state. I'm not talking about non-refundable grants, but let's say at least for the state to be there as part of the security for a private loan, or to provide some loans, more long-term loans, things like that. Yeah, so as said before, there's no such law that would define housing cooperatives, and because of some other laws, we are not able to do the rental housing cooperative that we want to do, where we lease some public land, where we do not own it, but we lease it. There are two reasons why we want to release it. First is this makes the rent potentially lower. And secondly, again, it's one of these additional mechanisms that prevents speculation and makes it a bit more secure and protects the public interest. Now, to do this, it's important for the municipality not to give the land on market price rate, but for a lower price. Unfortunately, officially, this is not possible yet due to some legislation, and we want to get some new law passed that would enable these municipalities to do this, because there are several municipalities that really want to do it, including municipality of Ljubljana. By the way, we have a very specific plot of land, which we have already an agreement with them to develop it. But they're not able to do it below the market price or for free even, which they would also be willing to do. And yeah, several years later, we got this question to become one of the most important pillars of political campaigns for government, national elections, and half a year later also for municipal elections. So we were campaigning to promote both cooperatives and the importance of accessible housing. So we really tried to say cooperatives are not the ultimate solution. They are, let's say, very complementary to a good public housing provision. And this is also a strong area where we campaign.
Right now, actually, our advocacy work was very successful in the last year. So we managed, a new law on housing was being developed, and we managed actually to get housing co-ops in there, and all the basic
all the benefits and obligations.
Yeah, that we would need for to be able to start the pilot project as we wanted it to. So the free or almost free lease and so on. And then overnight the government changed.
We now have this very extreme right-wing populist government.
And this housing law stayed in a drawer, and they don't want to hear about housing co-ops now. But we're also looking at possibilities of how we could, well, make the pilot project even if the legislation is not changed. So we're talking about, for example, with the Municipal Housing Fund, that they would basically give us a credit for the land or for the right to build a loan, that we would start repaying after 30 years. So basically after we paid off our other loans for the construction. And this is a possible way to still make the rent affordable. And in the meantime, we're, as Ruk said, we're also looking at how to maybe change some other stuff in the law so that we could still do this, but not talk about housing co-ops per se in the law, but talk about non-profit housing organizations, and try to redefine the term so that cooperatives could also fit in there. We're trying to develop the pilot project regarding if the law changes or not, and then also then have it in the contract that, you know, we're now working under these terms together, but if the law changes, then the terms of the project also change. So that then if the law would enable us to gain a right to build for free, then this could still be applied later on.
Yeah, so right now we have a kind of a huge boost. This is mainly due to the fact that in the last 2 years, we really tried hard to get non-refundable support, different grants, because we really, you know, we lack capacity, we lack resources, and this finally got us a little bit of financial capital to be able to, for some people to work a little, you know, half professionally at least on this, and it also enables us to pay for expert work, which we have to outsource. So right now, I mean, right exactly this moment, we established special groups that will be dealing in developing more advanced architectural designs, more advanced financial models, and more advanced legal models. So these are 3 important groups, plus let's say a 4th kind of an advocacy group. And we are working with this start to work with all these together because they're very much interlinked. And very soon we will also start to, when these groups are a little bit more established, let's say within a month or 2, we will again started including potential residents in the design process at least. And at this point, we're also not only working on our own pilot project in Ljubljana, but we have in the meantime also established quite good connections with several other cities where there's also either grassroots groups, or sometimes it's interest of the municipality that they want to develop something like this. So together with them, we will also be kind of testing, piloting this model that we are developing, if it is also suitable for them or not. And we will also try to teach them a little bit certain things that we think are important to kickstart such projects.
Yeah, so these tools that we're creating with the experts now, so about all the legal issues and all the financial aspects of the cooperative, we're trying to make them in this project in a way that they can anticipate very different scenarios in which a cooperative would be developed. So we're trying to do this as something that will be very helpful to all different kinds of housing co-ops that might want to develop in Slovenia.